That is a serious problem. It's one we cannot afford to continue. How do we change this? Well, what I want to do is fundamental. And it means going up against the federal government. Because the federal government's got the exact same problem, and they're not going to like the way I want to do things. But I don't care. This is the right way to do it. What I want to do is change the culture of welfare and change the culture of our government. Right now, our government defines success by the number of people they're helping. That's a mistake. We should be defining success by the number of people who no longer need help. That's a complete sea change in the way things are done. Let me give you an example. I had a constituent. Guy was a construction worker. Worked a couple different jobs. Didn't have insurance, but his daughter had leukemia. So his daughter was on access. The guy had the opportunity over the holidays a couple years ago to work overtime. So he took it. He said, great, Christmas presents this year. But he worked a couple too many hours. And he was going to lose his daughter's coverage. And so he called my office frantic. He said, can I pay a copay or a premium or something? I don't want to stop working, but I don't want to lose coverage for my daughter. And we looked into it. There is no way to pay a premium or a copay. They want you to give, they told him, no, you've got to stop working or you lose coverage. Because again, success is defined by how many people are on the system. And so stopping work, you stay on the system. And so you're encouraging people to do the thing you don't want right now. Now, this is where we have to go up against the federal government, because the federal government doesn't want to structure welfare this way. The way I think we ought to structure it is, you know what, if you make $1, that's great. We should be rewarded for doing so. Now, maybe 25 cents out of that dollar, rather than making extra bucks and losing all of your benefits, you know, you make that $1, we're going to take, say, 25 cents of that, you're going to have to pay as a copay or a premium to help cover the cost of your assistance. But every time you work more, you take home more money. And what that does is that moves people off of needing help to being self-sufficient. It moves people from welfare to self-reliance, from being a tax recipient to being a taxpayer. Not only does that, it's better for families too, because that helps. I mean, number one cause of divorce is money. And that really will help not only get people off of needing assistance, but we reward our programs. We reward those. Right now, government agencies and programs, they're rewarded by putting more people on. The larger their program, the more money they get, the more staff they get, the larger the office, the more the managers make. I mean, it all scales based on how many people are on the program, not how many people no longer need it. So this is a fundamental cultural change. But we do this, and it becomes a model for the rest of the nation. Because my philosophy is, don't take more from the taxpayers we still have. Get more taxpayers. Whether it be moving them from being a tax recipient into becoming a productive member of society, or attracting more taxpayers here to Arizona. Let's get back to the economy for a minute. What was the greatest tool for economic development after they invented the air conditioner for Arizona in our history? Gray Davis is governor of California. I mean, think about it. Those brownouts, those grayouts in California, they did more for Arizona economic development than anything in our history. I mean, it was great. I mean, I used to joke at the legislature, we had to fund his reelection as a state budget item because it was so good for Arizona. But seriously, people are still leaving California. Businesses are still leaving. Jobs are still leaving California. They're trying to escape the mess. But they're not coming to Arizona anymore. Why is that? They're going to Texas. They're going to Colorado. They're going to other states. They're not coming to Arizona because what are we hearing nationally? Arizona is the second worst state right after California. I mean, who wants to make a long-term investment in a state that has to rent their own capital? I mean, not exactly all that inspirational or confidence building. And so what's happening is they're saying, I'm not getting out of the frying pan right in the fire, I'm going somewhere else. Creating jobs should be the number one priority, because that's the real long-term solution to this budget problem and to the economic problem. Our office, we've estimated that during this housing bubble, we built 67,000 homes in Arizona that we did not have population growth to move into. This was investor-driven demand. That's like a ghost city if you put it all in one place. We estimate that on the commercial side, we have 40 million square feet of commercial and retail office space that's vacant right now. That's what's been hurting us economically. That's what's been killing us. But it's actually the reason why I'm very optimistic going forward. Remember, we're at the bottom point. We're going to start this recovery. As we start this recovery, those two things that were our greatest liability are about to become our greatest asset. A lot of extra homes means housing prices have dropped dramatically, right? Which means we're affordable. We're an affordable place to live. All that empty office space means office space is affordable, very cheap. So if you're a business and you're looking for a place to expand, we've got ready-made facilities already built out. All you got to do is move into it. But they're not going to move here if they think we're just as bad off as California. I mean, a lot of press right now is being made about solar. And when they did these new solar tax incentives to attract solar companies to Arizona, and we're getting a few of them. And I'm glad to get the solar job. We're getting like 200 solar jobs. That's great. I'm glad we're getting it. But stop and think about this one for a minute. Out of the 50 states, which state should be able to attract a solar company without a tax incentive? I mean, how bad must our tax and regulatory environment be that you've got to get a tax incentive to a solar company to come to the Sunshine State? This isn't something to be applauded. It's exposing one of the biggest problems we have in the state. What is that? It's the fact that we've got one of the highest commercial property tax rates in the nation. We're the fourth highest, fourth most expensive. Of course, we just raised property taxes through the governor just did that through that line item veto, so that's made things even worse. Fourth most expensive commercial property tax. What that means, it's the reason why we don't have a diversified economy. Because capital-intensive businesses don't come here unless they're powerful enough to get a special carve-out. Just think about what's solar. Solar is a lot of capital. It's a lot of solar panels. It's a lot of equipment. That's expensive when you have high property taxes. Why do you think every auto manufacturer tests their cars here, but none of them build them here? Because that's a lot of equipment. It's very expensive. What do we tend to attract here in Arizona? Well, call centers, credit card companies, insurance company. It's a telephone, a fax machine, a desk, and a computer. Not a lot of capital involved. So if we're going to want to diversify our investments, we need to bring that down. But this is the nice thing. We don't have to do it overnight. We don't have to do it tomorrow. Because investors, we all know through this recession that bean counters rule the world these days. When they make their decisions, though, they don't make them for 1 year like the legislature. They make them for the useful life of that factory, plant, and equipment. So if it's a 10-year, or 20-year, or 30-year useful life, usually they're right around 20. They look at the total cost over 20 years, not just 1 year. And so what we can do is we can simply say, you know what, we're going to use our growth to buy down that commercial rate over the next 20 years, which means come to Arizona, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and that's going to make it attractive. But I don't care what incentives you give, you still have to do one other thing, and that's the state of Arizona has to balance its budget. The state of Arizona has to get its own fiscal house in order, because I don't care what you promise somebody. If they don't believe that you can afford it in the long term, then they'll be afraid that, well, once I get there, you're just going to yank it away from me because you've got some other emergency. We want to know that you can actually balance your own books before we start moving here. And so that's the reason why the first thing we have to do if we're going to start attracting jobs, we got to balance our own budget. That's why I have the proposal with freezing spending, doing the debt consolidation plan. We can have a balanced budget next year with a surplus. Now, it'll be a really small surplus, but the